level creation. So today we're going to use the guide we created in a previous video to create our levels. We're going to touch a little bit to the lighting, the static meshes, and we're going to continue working with the materials. And we're also going to look at the sub-level systems so we can organize our level properly and to also make our life a little bit easier while building the levels. So let's get to it. So in Unreal, the first thing I'm going to do is create the levels. So I'm going to go in Maps and create a new folder, which I'm going to name Sub-Levels. Open it, and in there we're going to create a few levels. So right click and choose Level. The first one I'm going to name it L_square because it's going to be the level for square grid. Then another one and name it L_triangle, and the third one L_hexagon. So now we have a few levels which will contain our different environments. Perfect, but I will also create a fourth one, which is going to be for the lighting. So L_lighting. And then I'm going to click Save All, Save Selected. When levels are created that way, they are completely empty. And we can check that by double clicking on them and opening them. And we can see right here on the right that the hierarchy is completely empty. Same thing for all the other ones. And that's perfect because this is exactly what we want. I can go back to the maps and open my L entry. And now the next step is to add all those sub-levels into this level right here, which we can do via the levels window. So I'm going to go in Window in the top left corner and choose Levels. A new tab should appear. Mine appeared right there, but you can dock it wherever you want. By default, there's no sub-level, so there's only the persistent level that is visible here, which is our current level. So if you hide it or show it, it's going to disappear or reappear. But we're gonna add our levels, so let's select all the 4 levels right there and drop them into the list. And that's it, we now added all 4 levels into the persistent, which is the L entry. Perfect. We can now start moving things from the persistent into these levels. And we're going to start with the square. So I'm going to select my square grid and all the other actors that are made for that grid type. And then I'm going to go right click on the L square on the left. And then at the bottom, I can click on Move Selected Actors to Level, which is going to move the actors from the persistent into the L square. Click on it. And now to make sure that it works, you can simply click on the little eye beside L square to hide it. And then show it again. And you'll see your actors appearing and disappearing from the current level. Perfect, let's hide it. We're gonna do the same thing for the triangle. So select all the triangle's actors. Right click on L triangle, move selected actor to level. And then you can hide it. And a third time for the hexagon, so select all the hexagon actors. Right click on L hexagon, move selected actor to level, and then you can hide it. Perfect. It's now time to do the lighting level. So we're gonna pick some actors from the default levels right there. I'm actually going to delete the sky sphere because we're not gonna need it. And same thing for the sphere reflection capture. The only things that are left are the atmospheric fog, the light source, and the skylight, which I'm going to make all of them movable. So you can click on movable for all of them. And then select all 3. Right click on the L lighting and move selected actor to level. And now if you try to hide L lighting, you should see that the main level is pretty empty. Only the player start left and the debug menu. Perfect. Let's click Save All and save everything. And I still have a few things to say about the level, so let's make the lighting visible and the square, let's say. And now I'm going to show you how to add actors into those levels directly. So you don't have to add them into another level and then move them in this level. And now if you click like an empty space, I don't know if you noticed, but there's one level that is highlighted in blue. There's always one. And this is the current level, which means that any actors you're adding into the level are going to end up in this specific level, which in this case is the lighting. But I don't want to add actors into the lighting level. Let's say I want to add it into the square. So I'm going to double click on it. And now the L square becomes active. So now I can go in the Place Actor tab and let's say drag a cube in there. I'm going to click OK. Doesn't matter. Now if I go back in the levels and hide the L square, the cube disappears with it. But let's say we made a mistake and we add L lighting selected, like so. Then we added a cube in the level. But now when I try to hide L square, the cube doesn't hide, because it's not in that level, it's in the lighting level. Well, you can simply move it. So right click on square, move selected actor to level. And that's it, you can now hide the L square and the cube is in it. Perfect. I will delete these cubes because I don't need them. So just make sure to always double check in which level you added your actors, because it's pretty frequent that you add an actor into another level without even knowing it. And the last thing I have to say is, let's say if you press play right now, everything's black. And you can see in the level list on the left that everything's grayed out. No levels are visible. And this is because of the little blue dot beside the level name. This little blue dot right here means that the levels should be loaded via Blueprint, so we have to load them manually. But in this case, that's not what we want. So I'm just going to press stop. And then I can right click on one of those levels, so let's say lighting. And then change the streaming method from Blueprint to always loaded. The blue dot disappeared. I'm gonna do the same thing for the square, so right click on square, change streaming method, always loaded. So now if I press play, only two levels should be visible, which are the lighting and the square. The other ones are hidden and they are waiting for us to tell them to be visible via Blueprint. Okay, perfect. We now covered everything we needed to say about the levels. You can stop and save all. Okay, we can now start building our levels. So I'm going to need a few assets. So I'm going to go in Art and in the Meshes folder, and I'm going to create a new folder that I'm going to name Environment. I can open it and go in the Windows Explorer. Here I have a few meshes, so I'm going to get them and drop them into the project. And for the FBX import options, I don't want to generate the collision, so I'm going to uncheck this checkbox, expand right here and make sure that Unreal imports the normals and the tangents, so normals and tangent. Then I can scroll down, convert scene to true, the two other ones stay false. And then for the materials, I don't want to create new materials, so I'm going to change this from create new materials to do not create material. I can also uncheck textures, even though I don't have any textures in my FBX. Perfect, import all. Here I have the no smoothing group warning, but I'm going to ignore it, so you can close the message log. And you can click on save all to save your meshes. And I also have a few textures, so I'm going to import them right now. I'm going back in textures and in grids. And then I'm going to go in the Windows Explorer, select my 3 textures and drag them into Unreal. Save all to save them. As you can see, they are simply different versions of the previous textures we already had. Awesome, that's it for the assets. Good, we can now start building our levels. So the first thing I'm gonna do here is make sure that I'm in the L square level. So double click on L square. That way the L square is gonna become blue and we're gonna work in this level. I'm also going to delete these 3 cubes because I don't want them. And I'm going to scale my floor to, let's say, 10 by 10. So it's a huge floor. And I'm also going to make it lower so it doesn't affect us while we are editing our level. And right now we can see that we have the Unreal grid on top of our grid and it's a bit annoying. So I'm going to hide it. So I'm going to go in show in the top left corner and search for grid, uncheck grid. Perfect. We now only have our grid. Good. I'm gonna go in my meshes, environment, and take my SM cube platform. Drop it in the level. I'm going to center it in the well, so I'm going to reset the transform here. And right now it's a bit small because it's 1 tile. I'm going to scale it. So let's say 6 by 6. So 6 tile by 6 tile. And now it's not aligned properly with the grid anymore. So I'm just going to move it a little bit and align it. And actually, to help us align it, I'm going to reset that, and then I'm going to go in the top right corner here. We have the snapping. And then if we click on the 10, we can change the snap amount. And right now I'm going to pick 50. It's going to help us align it properly. So I can move it, okay. And then, okay. So now it's aligned properly with the grid. Great. But now it's all gray. So let's make it colorful, which I'm going to do by going in my colors, so materials, colors, and dropping a color on my mesh. Now we can see that only half of the mesh is colored. And this is because if I show the right side right here, this is because my mesh has 2 material ID. So there's the element 0 and the element 1, which means that we can apply 2 material to the same mesh, like so. So let's create another shade of blue. I'm going to duplicate MI blue and name it MI blue 2. Then I can open the instance right here and change the color to maybe something a bit darker, like that. Then I can apply it to my mesh. And that's already good, but it's not that great. It will be even nicer if we add a sort of textures on the top with the checker pattern. And that's exactly what we're gonna do. So let's go in colors with texture. And here, just to see, I'm going to apply the MI square line on the top of my mesh, like so. Okay, it looks alright. I have my texture, but it's not that great. It will be way better to have a real checker pattern, not only the lines. So let's duplicate the mi square line, which I'm going to name mi square underscore checker underscore 01, because we're probably gonna have more than one. Then we can open the instance right here, and we can also apply it to the mesh. So apply the new instance to the mesh. That way, if we check the texture and change the texture right here to the TX square checker, it's going to show the checker directly on the mesh. Perfect. But I don't want it to be black and white, I want it to be colored, so I'm going to check color and change the color to maybe a tint of blue, like something like that. Perfect. But I don't want to have the other squares black. I want to be able to change those colors also. And to do that, since we only have one color available to us right now in the material instance, we're going to have to change the material parent. So okay, let's open the parent. I'm going to double click on the parent right here to open it. I'm going to make it bigger and hide the instance for now. Right here, you can see that I changed the material a little bit to add a few comments at the top, but it doesn't really matter because we don't care about everything that affects the texture's position in the world. We only care about the color right now. So we're gonna focus on this part. I'm going to take the color and drag it a little bit on the left, and I'm actually going to duplicate it, so copy, paste. Then I'm going to rename the variable names, so color1 and color2. And then to combine those two colors, we're gonna use a linear interpolate. So right click, linear interpolate. And the way this node works is that it's taking an alpha and then choose between the color A or the color B based on that alpha, which is going to be the texture we have right here. So let's take it. I'm going to take the texture and plug it into the alpha. Then I'm going to take the color 1, plug it into A, and color 2, plug it into B. And I can connect all that to the base color. Now I can delete the multiply because I don't need it. And that's how it looks. If I look at the preview on the left, my grid completely disappeared. And same thing if I go in the square mode. And this is because my two colors right here are white and white. So both the background and the lines are white right now. So let's change that. I'm going to take the color 1 and edit the color to put it black, which should give the same result that we had before. Like that. So now we have the black lines with the white background. Perfect. Let's save that. Now if I go back in my level, my checker pattern changed a little bit. It's now blue and white instead of blue and black. Yeah, it's okay, but it's not what I want still. I'm going to take the instance again and tweak it. And right here, I now have access to color 1 and color 2. So I'm going to check color 2 and change the color so I can put it to anything I want. And in this case, maybe another tint of blue, darker blue, something like that. Perfect, that's great. Let's save this instance and close it. But we can also create another material instance for any other platforms that we want, if we want to use different colors. So let's say I'm duplicating this platform right here. I want it to still be the same color, perfect. But then if I create another platform, and then let's say this one I can change the scale, so I don't know, 6 and then maybe 10 in that direction. Then I can align it with a grid, maybe 12 because it's going to be better, something like that. And this one I want it to have a different color than the other ones. Okay, it's simple to do. You can simply duplicate the first material instance, open it, apply it to your mesh in the world, and then you can change the colors. So let's say a darker blue for this one, and an even darker blue for that one, I guess. Something like this. Perfect, you can save it all. Save all. And that's how you create the platforms with a nice checker pattern on the top. And it's time to do that for all the other levels. So I'm going to hide the level square right now because I'm done with it. And let's say triangle. Double click on triangle and make it visible. So now we are editing triangle. I'm going to center this in the world. Delete my 3 triangles here because I don't need them anymore. Scale my floor to, let's say, 10 and 10 to make it bigger. And I'm going to make it lower a little bit. Then I can go back in my meshes, in my environment, and take the triangle platform, center it in the world. In this case, it's already aligned with the grid, so perfect. We don't have anything to change with that. And we can go with the color with textures. I'm going to duplicate mi triangle line and rename it mi triangle checker underscore 01 and apply it to the top of my mesh. Then I can open it. And here I can change the texture, so change the texture from this line to that one. And I can also change the colors. So instead of black and white, I'm going to make it, let's say, red and orange-ish, something like that. And here we can see that it's a bit ugly on the left because my triangles are too big for the size of my grid. So I'm just going to go in grid size and change the B, which is the height of my grid, to something that makes sense for this mesh. So let's say something like that. So about 500. Perfect, that's all good. We can save this instance. And now the bottom of my mesh is still ugly, so we're gonna add a color to it. So I'm going to duplicate MI red to MI red 2 maybe, and I'm going to change the color to something, I don't know, a shade of orange, which means that I'm also going to rename it MI orange and apply it to the bottom of my mesh, something like that. And it's the same thing. You can duplicate this platform and move it around, make sure to align it with the grid while doing so. Something like that. And you can even fill the hole in there. So let's say duplicate it, move it in the middle, move it, rotate it a little bit, and here we go. So now it's filling the gap. Let's make this color a little bit different than the previous one. So go back in Color with Textures, duplicate MI triangle checkers, open it, and apply it to the mesh. And then you can change the color a little bit. So let's say a redder tint of orange. Something like that. Perfect. That's it for our triangle level, so we can hide it. Double click on Hexagon. Now I'm going to do the same thing. Center it to the world, delete my 3 hexagon that I don't need, scale the floor to, let's say, 10 by 10, bring it a little bit down. Then I go in my mesh, take my hexagon platform, center it in the world. And it's aligned properly with the grid by default. Perfect. Go back in Color with Textures, duplicate MI hexagon line and rename it MI hexagon checker. 01. Apply it to the mesh. Open the instance. Change the texture to the checker texture. Change the colors to anything you want. So let's say a tint of green, something like that. Now we still have a bit of weirdness on the side, so I'm going to adjust the grid size to fit with this model. So let's say something like that. I don't know, 500. Perfect, let's save and close. I can now do the same thing. So duplicate the platform, move it around, create a few copies of it to have a little bit of a world building. Something like that. And you can change the colors of any of these if you want to. Even the bottom, you don't only have to change the top. So you can make that one this color and that one that color if you want to. And it makes me think that these are all gray, so that's not nice. I'm going to drag my green on top of them just to fill up the colors. Perfect, save all. And I actually forgot to mention it, but you don't have to have a wall that is completely flat like that. You can add some height in your tiles, so you can move the floor a little bit higher, a little bit more and more and more if you want to. The height doesn't really matter, so you can decide if you want to have steps that are 50 height or maybe 100, 200, something like that. You can have anything you want. We're simply going to decide later when we do the grid which height is acceptable for the grid. But for now you can design the level the way you want. So now the last thing that we have to cover is all the other meshes that are not the platforms. So anything that you add onto the grid or any other kind of platforms that you would like to have on the side right there. And in short, you can do pretty much anything you want. So for example, if I go in the Place Actor tab, I can decide to drag a cube. So let's say I have a cube here as obstacle on my grid. I can take a cylinder, I can take a cone, a sphere, anything should work. And also if you decide to take a cube as another platform right there that you would like to have like on the side right there, it will also work. So you can really do anything you want. As long as it follows the grid a little bit, everything should be fine. So you can go and model anything you want to add onto the grid. Or I'm actually going to show you what I did for all my assets in case you want to use the same technique. But first, let's delete all that. Delete, 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 this and that. Perfect. And this is what I did for my assets. If you go back in the meshes that we imported at the beginning of the video, we have a cube, an hexagon, and a triangle. Cube, hexagon, triangle, right there. The cube's a little bit bigger, triangle a bit smaller, but it doesn't really matter. What I did is I used only these three shapes for all my assets. So the fences, the trees, the walls, the little bridges, everything is made with only these 3 shapes. And I'm going to show you how I did. Okay, so let's delete these because we don't need them in that level. And I'm actually going to hide Hexagon and double click on the persistent level. And in here, I'm going to drag a cube, which I'm going to center into the world. Here we go, we have our first mesh. Let's create a tree from it. So I'm going to start by scaling the trunk. So let's say dot 1 and dot 1. It's a bit small, so maybe dot 2, something like that. We have a trunk. I'm going to duplicate this cube and move it up a little bit. And then I'm going to change the scale again. So let's say 0.5, 0.5, or maybe I can actually just scale it like this. And I can remove the snapping in the top right corner to make it easier. So let's say I can tweak it like that. Okay, here we go. So we have the first row of leaves. I can also move it a little bit on the side and maybe rotate it a little, something like that to give it a little bit more personality. And I can duplicate it and move it above. Here I can scale it down a little bit more. I can move it a little bit, rotate, here we go, and do the same thing a third time. So move it right here, scale it down, a bit higher up maybe, and maybe something like this. And this is our tree. It's pretty nice, no? Okay, it's a bit gray. Let's add some colors. I'm going to go in colors. I don't have a brown, so I'm going to create a new material for brown, mi_brown. Underscore 01 that I'm going to open and select a tint of brown. So let's say this thing right here, something like that. Perfect. Save. And then I can drop it onto the trunk. And now for the leaves, maybe I want to have a few tint of green. So let's say green 2 and green 3. I'm going to edit the greens. So maybe this one is a bit darker for the green 2 and for the green 3, maybe a little bit even darker. Something like that, maybe. We'll see. And then I can drop them onto the tree, so this, and that. And here we go, we have a nice tree. And now that we're happy with the tree, we want to be able to reuse it anywhere in our game. So we are simply going to convert it into a real static mesh that will then be used everywhere. So I'm going to save all to make sure the tree is saved and my materials and everything. And I'm going to go back in the Place Actor tab. I'm going to take an empty actor and drop it into the world. This actor is going to be the pivot of our tree. So let's center it into the world. And then I'm going to grab all the cubes. So my 4 cubes right here. I'm going to make them movable because the default actor by default is movable. So we're not going to change that. I'm going to click on movable and drop all of these onto the actor. So now the actor can move around and everything follows. I'm going to leave it in the middle of the world. To convert it to a static mesh, what we have to do is select the actors and all the sub-actors that you want to convert. Right-click on the root and click on Convert Actors to Static Mesh. A window will pop up and Unreal is going to ask you where you want to save it. I'm going to save it in Art, Meshes, Environment. And I'm going to name it SM301. Press OK. And we now have our nice tree that we can reuse in the game. Perfect. If by mistake you ended up with something like this, with inverted faces, so let's say right now my cube at the bottom is inverted, this is probably because you did something wrong with the scale of your cube. So if you check at my cube right there, my scale is all in negative. So minus 0.7, minus 0.7, minus 0.5. So yeah, everything's in negative. So that's why this cube right there ended up being inverted. So just make sure that all your scaling are positive and you should not have any issues, and it should give you something like this. Perfect, let's go add those trees to the real levels. So I'm going to delete all of these, and I'm also going to delete the one that I used to create the tree. And I'm going to go back in the level and double click on L square. And in here we can add our trees. So I can add these trees right here. This tree right there, that one here. I can rotate them, I can make them bigger, doesn't really matter, I can do whatever I want. Here we go, we have a few trees on our level. Perfect. And we can also use the broken one, why not? Oh wow, it's so nice. And it is exactly that technique that I used for all my assets in my game. So I created all of them one by one, with cubes. And it worked pretty great, I think. But in my case, since I already have all those assets created, I'm going to import them. But first I'm going to rename these trees because I have a few trees in my pack that already has those names. So I'm going to rename this one and that one to tree 7 and tree 9. And then to make sure the name updated properly, I'm going to right click on content and fix up redirectors. Then I'm going to go in Windows Explorer, take all my meshes and drop them into the environment folder. Here the same as before, auto-generate collision to false, import the normal and tangent, convert the scene, no for the other two, and do not create materials. Import all. There's a pop-up for the smoothing group, doesn't matter, close it. And then we can save all. And here I have all my assets. So I have these three, that other one. They are pretty nice, I assure you, but for now they are pretty gray. We're gonna add some colors to them later. I have a bush, another kind of bush that I can scale up and fit to the grid if I want to. Another bush. I have a few planks here and there that I can use as extra platform if I want to. And I only use these assets to make my demo. I also placed a few cubes here and there because it looks nice. Good. And to fix the gray issues, we can do the same thing that we did before, which is adding materials to them. So I can add colors, oops, not on the floor, I can add some color in and there, making it nice and pretty. I don't have a few material right now, so it's not gonna look that great, but whatever. It's just to quickly show you. Boom, boom, boom. Et voila, that's so pretty. But anyway, I'm only going to make those assets available on Patreon, but it doesn't really matter for you if you don't want them, because you can actually create them yourself and they are pretty easy to do. But anyway, that's it for today. I'm going to leave you with a small edit of me building my levels, and I'm gonna see you in the next video. Bye bye!